Behold the mournful howl of the wind across the desert sands, the fleeting shadows of a caravan wending its way through the heart of night. Torchlight flickers in the gloom, and the weary voice of a man, lifted unto the star-strewn heavens, doth whisper, O God of my fathers, is this land promised unto us, or naught but a fleeting mirage? Thus unfoldeth the tale of Israel, an ancient chronicle woven through the labyrinth of time, betwixt myth and truth, amidst inscriptions and legends. To comprehend this saga, we must journey deep into the annals of history. One of the eldest relics bearing the name Israel is a stone stele from the reign of Pharaoh Merneptah, wrought in the 13th century before the birth of Christ in Egypt, now preserved in the halls of Cairo's museum. Therein it proclaimeth, Israel is laid waste, its seed is no more. Yet was it so? This marketh the first whisper of a people who called themselves the children of Israel, though who they were and whence they arose remaineth veiled in mystery. The Torah doth recount that these children of Israel, led by Moses, fled the bonds of Egypt unto a land deemed promised. Yet no chronicle beyond sacred writ affirmeth the sudden exodus of a mighty host from Egypt's grasp. Some scholars deem this tale as symbol of the gradual wanderings of Semitic tribes unto Canaan. By the 11th century afore Christ, scattered folk later known as the children of Israel settled in Canaan, a land then bowed beneath the yoke of mighty empires such as Egypt and Assyria. Yet these people, who would claim the name Israelite, waxed in strength anon. The book of Samuel doth herald Saul as Israel's first king, who waged war against their ancient foes, the Philistines. But greater renown fell to his successor, David. A fearless warrior and godly king in sacred lore, David chose a humble yet faithful city as his seat, Jerusalem. Thereafter, so saith the Tales, his son Solomon rose to power and reared a splendid temple in that city, later famed as the First Temple. But doth truth abide in these accounts? Diggers of the past have unearthed traces of a city in Jerusalem from that age, yet no certain proof of David's or Solomon's reign hath come to light save perchance the Tel Dan inscription, which speaketh of the house of David, mayhap the earliest echo of this kingdom beyond Holy Writ. The realm of Israel stood poised to flourish, yet its golden age endured but briefly. Upon Solomon's death, the kingdom clove in twain, Israel to the north, Judah to the south, and thus began the tempests that would forever alter the fate of this people. Upon the death of Solomon, his vast dominion was rent asunder into twain, the kingdom of Israel in the north, with its seat at Samaria, and the kingdom of Judah in the south, holding fast to Jerusalem as its capital. Yet these fledgling realms stood encircled by mightier powers. In the 8th century afore the birth of Christ, the Assyrian Empire, wielding ruinous might, swept into the land. In the year 722 afore Christ, Sargon II, king of Assyria, laid siege to Samaria and brought the kingdom of Israel to its knees, casting it into oblivion. Thousands of its folk were driven into exile, never more to return unto their ancestral soil. The book of 2 Kings, in its 17th chapter and 6th verse, doth proclaim, And the king of Assyria carried Israel away captive, and scattered them amidst the cities of the Medes and Assyrians. Yet Judah endured still. Jerusalem stood firm, though its respite was but a fleeting shadow. In the 6th century afore the birth of Christ, another power arose from the east, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. In the year 586 afore Christ, Nebuchadnezzar II, king of Babylon, after a protracted siege, did conquer Jerusalem. The great temple of Solomon was given unto flames, the city's walls tumbled down, and many of the Judahites were borne away into captivity. Inscriptions unearthed in Babylon speak plainly of this deed. One among them, known as the Nabonidus Chronicle, doth recount the desolation of Judah. Henceforth, the people of Judah entered a shadowed age, known in the annals of time as the Babylonian exile. Many dwelt in the city of Babylon, where they guarded their culture and identity against the tides of oblivion. Yet the ember of hope to return unto their homeland never flickered nor faded within their hearts. In the year 539, afore the birth of Christ, yet another empire did rise, the Achaemenid Empire, led by Cyrus the Great. Having vanquished Babylon, he issued a decree famed in the annals of Judah as the Cyrus Cylinder, whereby the Judahites were granted leave to return unto their land and raise anew their temple. The book of Ezra doth proclaim, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, The Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. Whosoever among his people desireth, let him go up freely. Upon their return, in the year 516 afore Christ, the Judahites did erect the second temple, which became the heart of their faith and identity. Yet, though they settled once more in their ancestral domain, sterner days loomed upon the horizon. The empires that followed, the Greeks and the Romans, cast their shadows over Judea, ushering in fresh trials for this nation. Judea was reborn, but for how long could it withstand the tempests of history? The sound of soldiers' footfalls echoed through the lanes of Jerusalem, their blazing torches casting a golden gleam upon the temple's pillars in the dark of night. Amidst terror and stillness, a man clad in a flowing robe kneeleth afore a statue of Zeus, the smoke of sacrifice curling through the air. Yet in that selfsame moment, a youth, wroth with fury, crieth out from the throng, This is an affront to the Lord. We shall not be enslaved. And lo, from the depths of time, the flames of rebellion doth blaze forth. In the year 332 afore the birth of Christ, Alexander the Great swept through the lands of the east, toppling the mighty Achaemenid Empire. Judea, without great strife, yielded unto him. Unlike conquerors of old, Alexander pursued a different course, showing reverence unto the faiths of the lands he claimed. 'Tis said even the priests of Jerusalem hailed him as a deliverer. Yet, upon his sudden death in 323 afore Christ, his vast dominion was cloven amongst his generals. Judea first fell under the sway of the Ptolemies of Egypt, but in 198 afore Christ, the Seleucid Empire of Syria did seize it. In this age, the ways of the Greeks' Hellenism crept slowly into Judea. Temples to Greek gods arose, their tongue gained favor, and some among the Judahites took unto themselves Greek names. Yet such changes were not to the liking of all. In the year 175 afore the birth of Christ, a man ascended the throne of the Seleucid Empire, whose reign would forever alter the fate of the Judahites. Antiochus for Epiphanes, esteeming himself the manifestation of the gods, he resolved to wholly Hellenize Judea. In 167 afore Christ, he issued a decree unprecedented in its audacity. The Torah was forbidden, circumcision declared unlawful, offerings to the Lord in the temple of Jerusalem were halted, and a statue of Zeus was set within the sacred precincts of the Judahite sanctuary. The Judahite chronicler Flavius Josephus, in his tome The Jewish War, doth recount, Antiochus defiled the holiest of places, and compelled the people to offer sacrifice unto gods they knew not. These acts did kindle the wrath of the Judahites, yet the true spark of revolt was struck in a humble town called Modin. Upon a fateful day in the year 167 afore the birth of Christ, Greek emissaries entered Modin and demanded of a Judahite priest named Mattathias that he offer sacrifice upon a Greek altar. Yet, aflame with righteous fury, he slew the Greek soldier and cried aloud, Whosoever would fight for the law of the Lord, let him follow me. Thus was kindled a rebellion, later famed as the Maccabean Revolt. The mantle of leadership fell to Mattathias' son, Judah Maccabee, who, with cunning guerrilla stratagems, shattered the Seleucid host, and in 164 afore Christ, marched triumphant into Jerusalem. The Judahites purged their temple of Greek defilement and reconsecrated it, an act which birthed the festival of Hanukkah, cherished by Judahites unto this day. Yet this was but the dawn of their saga. The lineage of the Maccabees, thereafter known as the Hasmoneans, established a realm in Judea nigh unto independence. But ere a century had passed, a new and formidable power seized the fate of this land: Rome. Judea broke free from the yoke of the Greeks, yet this liberty came at a cost. Strife within, rifts of faith, and the rise of the Romans heralded a new age, one that would at last culminate in the fall of Jerusalem once more. The heavens above Jerusalem blaze red. Flames leap from the rooftops of the Second Temple. Black smoke coils into the sky, and cries resound through the city's narrow lanes. Roman soldiers, clad in gleaming armor, have breached the walls, rending them asunder. Amidst this ruin, a Roman commander gazes upon the horizon, murmuring with pride, "Jerusalem hath fallen. Their temple is no more." Yet how came this tale to such an end? Following the Maccabean revolt, the Hasmonean dynasty held sway over Judea for nigh unto a century. Yet strife within and rivalries amongst kin drove them toward a greater power, the Roman Republic. In the year 63 for the birth of Christ, Pompey the Great, that famed general of Rome, did march upon Judea. Jerusalem fell, and Judea was bound as a vassal state unto Rome. Yet to govern this land, Rome had need of a local ruler. In this hour, there arose a man whose name would echo everlasting in the annals of Judah: Herod the Great. Herod, anointed by the Roman Senate as king of Judea, pursued a twofold path. With an iron fist he crushed his foes, whilst with the other hand he wrought the grandest works of construction in Judah's history. He restored the Second Temple, steadfast since the days of Cyrus, and transformed it into one of the most magnificent edifices of the ancient world. Flavius Josephus, in his Antiquities of the Jews, doth proclaim, Herod reared the temple so vast and splendid that even the enemies of the Judahites confessed its beauty. Yet Herod bore a blood-stained visage too. He slew many of his own kin, quelled dissent with ruthless hand, and as Christian tales recount, ordered the slaughter of the innocents in Bethlehem to thwart the rise of a Judahite savior. Upon his death in the year 4 afore Christ, Judea plunged into turmoil, and Rome, to maintain its grip, set its own governors over the land. Among these was a name etched in history: Pontius Pilate. In this age, a religious movement arose in Judea that would one day reshape the world: Christianity. Yet the Judahites remained under Rome's yoke, and discontent swelled amongst them. In the year 66 of the Common Era, a great uprising, known as the First Jewish-Roman War, burst forth. The sundry factions of the Judahites, Pharisees, and Sadducees alike cast aside their quarrels and rose as one against the might of the Roman Empire. In the year 70 of the Common Era, the Roman Emperor Vespasian dispatched his son Titus to quell Judea. After a grueling siege, the Roman legions breached Jerusalem's defenses. Flavius Josephus, a witness to this war, doth recount, the Roman soldiers poured into the city like a flood. The temple was consumed by fire, and naught of it remained. The people were butchered in the streets, and the city drowned in blood. The Second Temple, holiest of sanctuaries to the Judahites, was utterly laid waste, leaving only a fragment of its walls, known in latter days as the Western Wall. Jerusalem was free no more. The Second Temple stood destroyed, and the Judahites were scattered afar. Yet the tale of this people had not yet reached its end. Fierce winds howl o'er the ruins of Jerusalem. The temple is no more. Streets once teeming with life now lie cloaked in dust and ash. Roman soldiers drag the last remnants of the rebellion away in chains. The cries of women and children echo amidst the blood-stained cobblestones. Among the captives, an old man in tattered robes casts a final glance upon the half-crumbled walls of the city and whispers, "Shall we one day return?" Yet this was not the end of the Judahites, but the dawn of a bitter journey, 1,000 years fraught with longing and hope. With the fall of Jerusalem in the year 70 of the Common Era, the Judahites faced a bitter fate. exile, dispersion, and a struggle for survival. Many were borne away as slaves to Rome, where some met their end in the gladiatorial arenas for the amusement of the Romans. Others fled to North Africa, Persia, Mesopotamia, and even the Iberian Peninsula, that land now called Spain and Portugal. These wandering Judahites forged communities in foreign realms, which in time gave rise to the Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews. Flavius Josephus, in his The Jewish War, doth write, "After the city's ruin, the Romans slew or sold into bondage all they found. Hence began the scattering of the Judahites." This scattering is named the diaspora, a term signifying the exile and dispersal of a people from their ancestral homeland. Yet, amidst this darkened age, the Judahites clung steadfastly to their identity. With the destruction of the Second Temple, the Judahites could no longer perform many of their sacred rites. How then might they preserve their traditions? The answer lieth in an enduring work, the Talmud. This compendium of religious texts, laws, and commentaries was crafted by Judahite rabbis in Babylonia, near what is now Baghdad, and in Jerusalem. The Talmud compriseth two chief parts, the Mishnah, a codification of oral laws and Judahite customs, and the Gemara, a collection of rabbinic expositions and elucidations upon the Mishnah. This tome became the very bond that held the Judahites as a united people, even bereft of their land. Rabbi Yoshanan ben Zakkai, one of the era's greatest sages, spake words that echo through time. Though they have taken our temple, they cannot seize our knowledge nor our writings. Our faith shall abide in hearts and minds. Thus, across the far reaches of the earth, despite their dispersion, the Judahites safeguarded their religion, the Hebrew tongue, and their cherished traditions. In the centuries that followed, the Jews found themselves under the sway of divers dominions. Within the Eastern Roman Empire, known as Byzantium, many endured great persecution. Yet in the realm of Sasanian Persia, they enjoyed liberties more bounteous, and there did flourish mighty Jewish communities. With the rise of Islam in the 7th century, a multitude of Jews journeyed unto Baghdad, Al-Andalus, and Egypt. In the days of the Abbasid Caliphate, the Jews of Baghdad were governed by the Rosh Galut, the exilarch or leader of the exiles, who tended to the affairs of their people. This era shone as a golden age of Jewish thought, yet ever were there seasons of prejudice, expulsion, and slaughter. In the medieval lands of Europe, the Jews were oft cast out from cities and realms, as history doth record. They were banished from England in the year 1290, from France in 1306, and from Spain in 1492, amidst the terrors of the Inquisition. Still, through all such trials, the Jews clung steadfastly to their dream of returning to the land of their forefathers. Through the passage of centuries, the Jews did ever cherish a fervent love for Jerusalem, proclaiming in their prayers, "Next year in Jerusalem." In the 16th and 17th centuries, certain bands of Jews from the lands of Europe and the Ottoman Empire ventured back onto Palestine, taking up abode in cities such as Safed, Tiberias, and Jerusalem. In those days, great rabbis like Yehuda Alkalai and Zvi Hirsch Kalischer did champion the notion of a return to the land of Judah, though this vision had not yet gathered sufficient strength. Then, in the 19th century, amidst the rise of nationalism and the tumults of a changing world, the movement of Zionism was born. Centuries of wandering, thousands of pages inscribed in sacred tomes, and prayers whispered in the stillness of night had marked their course. Yet now, the history of the Jews stood upon the threshold of a mighty transformation, the return to the promised land. In the autumn of 1897, in a small cafe in Basel, Switzerland, a man sat with papers scattered before him. His name was Theodor Herzl, a journalist and visionary who would leave an indelible mark on history. As he gazed out, the winds of change blew across Europe, and in his heart he carried a dream of a Jewish homeland. With the rise of nationalist movements across Europe, Herzl recognized that Jews, scattered and persecuted across the globe, needed a refuge, a land they could call their own. He wondered if the time had finally come to turn this ancient hope into reality. In his seminal work, Der Judenstaat, published in 1896, Herzl proposed the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine, believing that the solution to Jewish suffering lay in the return to their ancestral land. At the First Zionist Congress in Basel, 1897, Herzl and his followers laid the groundwork for the Zionist movement, announcing the goal of establishing a Jewish homeland. Herzl's call to action was simple, yet profound. If we will it, it is no dream. This marked the beginning of the modern Zionist movement, though it was far from universally accepted. Some Jews sought to secure their place in the countries they lived in, while others, led by Herzl, felt that only a return to the land of Israel could ensure Jewish survival and autonomy. The next step in the realization of this vision was the migration of Jews to Palestine, which began in earnest during the early 20th century. Known as Aliyah Rishona, or the First Aliyah, this wave of immigration was primarily composed of Jews from Eastern Europe, driven by the twin forces of pogroms and rising anti-Semitism, as well as the ideological pull of Zionism. These early pioneers, many of whom were secular, sought to build a Jewish homeland on land that had long been under Ottoman rule. However, their journey was far from easy. The land was harsh and undeveloped, and they faced not only physical challenges, such as diseases and poor living conditions, but also resistance from local Arab populations. Yet, in the face of adversity, these pioneers established the first Jewish agricultural settlements, such as Zichron Yaakov and Rishon LeZion, laying the foundation for the future Jewish state. They sought to reclaim the land through hard work, creating an economy based on farming, but their presence also foreshadowed the tensions that would soon arise. The Zionist movement gained further momentum during World War I, when the British, seeking support from the Jews for their efforts in the war, issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917. This declaration stated that the British government supported the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, while also pledging to protect the rights of the existing non-Jewish communities in the area. The Balfour Declaration was a pivotal moment in Zionist history, as it marked the first formal recognition by a major power of the Jewish people's right to a homeland in Palestine. For the Jewish community, it was a breakthrough that provided legitimacy and international support for the movement. Herzl, who had passed away in 1904, did not live to see the fruits of his labor, but his dream began to take shape as Jewish migration to Palestine increased, with new waves of immigrants arriving to build a homeland in the land of their ancestors. However, the Balfour Declaration was not without controversy. It sparked significant opposition from the Arab population, who viewed it as a betrayal of their rights and a threat to their political future. Tensions between Jews and Arabs in Palestine would continue to escalate in the years to come, setting the stage for the conflict that still persists today. With the Balfour Declaration and the end of World War I, Palestine came under British control as a League of Nations mandate, further facilitating Jewish immigration. During this time, Jewish communities in Palestine grew, and the foundations of a future state were being laid. However, the growth of the Jewish population and the increasing Zionist presence in Palestine led to growing friction with the Arab population, who began to feel that their land was being taken away from them. The rise of Zionism, while offering a solution to the Jewish problem, also created a deep sense of alienation and resentment among the Arab inhabitants of the region. As Jewish settlers worked to establish their new society, the stage was set for a larger, more complex struggle over the future of Palestine. In the next chapter, we will explore how the growing tensions between Jews and Arabs would shape the political landscape of the region, eventually leading to the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. As the sun set on the British Empire, Palestine stood on the precipice of history. The interwar years had transformed the land into a battleground of competing nationalisms. where Jewish aspirations for statehood clashed with Arab fears of displacement. The British, caught between their promises to both communities, found themselves unable to quell the rising tensions. By the 1930s, Jewish immigration had increased dramatically, spurred on by the horrors of Nazi persecution in Europe. With the rise of Adolf Hitler and the unfolding catastrophe of the Holocaust, Zionist leaders saw an urgent need to accelerate the establishment of a Jewish homeland. The 1939 British White Paper, however, dealt a devastating blow to this vision, severely restricting Jewish immigration to Palestine at a time when European Jewry faced extermination. As World War II raged on, the plight of the Jews reached a breaking point. The Nazi death camps of Auschwitz and Treblinka revealed the full extent of Jewish vulnerability, reinforcing the belief that only a sovereign Jewish state could ensure their survival. The Holocaust not only shattered millions of lives, but also reshaped global perceptions of Zionism. No longer merely an ideological movement, it became a necessity for survival. The end of World War II in 1945 did not bring peace to Palestine. Instead, it saw a surge in underground resistance against British rule. Zionist paramilitary groups such as Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi intensified their efforts, launching attacks on British targets, demanding an end to immigration restrictions, and pressuring the international community to recognize Jewish statehood. One of the most infamous incidents of this period was the King David Hotel bombing in 1946, orchestrated by Irgun, which targeted the British administrative headquarters in Jerusalem, killing 91 people. While some viewed it as an act of terrorism, Zionist leaders framed it as part of a broader struggle for national liberation. At the same time, tensions between Jews and Arabs in Palestine erupted into open violence, with deadly riots, ambushes, and retaliatory attacks. The British, exhausted from war and unable to maintain control, sought to extricate themselves from the quagmire, referring the issue to the newly formed United Nations. In 1947, after intense deliberations, the United Nations Partition Plan was announced, a proposal to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem placed under international control. The Jewish leadership, though not entirely satisfied, accepted the plan, viewing it as a historic opportunity. The Arab leadership, however, rejected it outright, seeing it as an unjust division of their land and a betrayal of their rights. As the British prepared to withdraw from Palestine, violence escalated into full-scale conflict. Armed Jewish militias clashed with Arab fighters, and the country descended into chaos. On May 14, 1948, as the last British officials departed, David Ben-Gurion, standing before a packed hall in Tel Aviv, declared the establishment of the State of Israel. His words, solemn and resolute, marked the culmination of a dream that had spanned millennia. The land of Israel was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here their spiritual, religious, and national identity was formed. The Jewish world erupted in celebration, but the moment of triumph was short-lived. Within hours, the armies of Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq launched an invasion, determined to crush the newborn state before it could take root. Thus began the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, a conflict that would shape the future of the region. The war was brutal and relentless, with Jewish and Arab forces locked in fierce battles over key cities and strategic territories. Against all odds, Israel not only survived, but expanded its borders beyond the UN partition lines, securing territories that would remain a source of contention for decades to come. By the time the war ended in 1949, the map of Palestine had been irreversibly altered. Israel had solidified its existence, gaining recognition from major world powers, including the United States and the Soviet Union. However, for the Palestinian Arabs, the war became known as Al-Nakba, the catastrophe. Over 700,000 Palestinians were displaced, many fleeing or being expelled from their homes, becoming refugees in neighboring Arab states. This mass exodus sowed the seeds of a conflict that would persist for generations. The dream of Zionism had been realized, but it had come at a profound cost, leaving behind wounds that remain unhealed. The birth of Israel was not the end of the struggle. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter. The Arab-Israeli conflict would evolve, marked by further wars, territorial disputes, peace attempts, and enduring animosities. From the Six-Day War of 1967 to the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian tensions, the region remains entangled in the legacies of its past. As history has shown, nations are not forged in moments of triumph alone, but in the trials and tribulations that follow. The story of Israel and Palestine is far from over, and its next chapters continue to be written with every passing day.